This is a sheet of wallpaper. Most GCSE students produce settings for their creative writing that is just like it. Flat, dull, and plain. But this is such a huge missed opportunity, because a great setting sets the mood, builds tension, foreshadows events, reveals things about your characters, and sometimes even drives the story forward. I mean, consider this opening line from 1984 by George Orwell. It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Now, on the surface, it's quite ordinary. And then you realise that clocks don't strike 13, and that tiny detail tells us the world is unnatural, controlled, and disturbing. The setting isn't just where the story happens, it's shaping how we feel about everything. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to craft settings for GCSE creative writing, just like George Orwell, so your examiners can't help but give you top marks. And just quickly, if you're serious about hitting grades 7, 8 and 9, then check the first link in the description and book in for a completely free first lesson with me. We'll build you a bank of ready to use settings for your exam that you can literally use for any creative writing question and boost your overall GCSE English language grades. Okay, let's get into the video and learn what it takes to write a high-level setting. So for all English exam boards, language paper 1 is going to ask you to write a description or the opening to a story. Now for descriptions and narratives, you will always be using settings. And just like with characters, settings have got 3 main ingredients. Atmosphere and mood, which is the emotional tone or feeling of the world you're creating. The physical environment, which is the tangible details like weather and buildings and furniture and nature. And we have sensory details like sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, where we build atmosphere and shape the physical environment. And these features are not random. They work together to create something vivid and meaningful. Let's break each of them down now and have a look at some famous examples. So firstly, we've got atmosphere and mood, which you, as the writer, decide on before you even write a single word. And I want you to think of the atmosphere and mood a bit like background music. It's colouring everything. So before a single character speaks, your reader should already feel suspense or joy or comfort or fear or whatever emotions you want to arouse. And a great example of an atmosphere being deliberately crafted to arouse emotions is in The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. Now for context, this is a gothic horror story describing the paranormal encounters of a man who's called Arthur Kipps, who goes to this place called Eel Marsh House. And to amplify the sinister mood, Hill uses the weather. Here's a passage that shows this. Fog was outdoors, hanging over the river, creeping in and out of alleyways and passages, swirling thickly between the bare trees of all the parks and gardens of the city. And indoors too, seething through cracks and crannies like sour breath, gaining a sly entrance every opening of a door. It was a yellow fog, a filthy, evil-smelling fog, a fog that choked and blinded, smeared and stained. This perfectly aligns with Gothic conventions, eliciting like this deep sense of unease in the reader, and Kipps himself foreshadowing his later terrifying encounters with the Woman in Black. Now, to create atmospheres and moods that actually arouse emotions and engagement, we need to manipulate the physical environment in which the plot actually unfolds. And when it comes to creating your own physical environment, there are several key features that you can draw on. So we have the weather, which is including conditions, seasons, the sky, colours, light, the sun, the moon, the stars, the temperature, all of which can be manipulated to induce prophetic fallacy and reflect a mood or atmosphere you want to create. We have nature, like plants and animals, and geography, which are all symbolic. They reveal key details about your characters and inform your readers about how hostile the environment is. And we have buildings, so architecture, furniture, machinery, and housing and room design. They all reveal key details about your characters and the settings that they are operating in. Now, one of my favourite examples of all time is the description of the river from The Wind in the Willows. Just take a listen to this and take note of how amazing it is. Never in his life had he seen a river before. This sleek, sinuous, full-bodied animal, chasing and chuckling, gripping things with a gurgle and leaving them with a laugh, to fling itself on fresh playmates that shook themselves free and were caught and held again. All was a shake and a shiver. Glints and gleams and sparkles, rustle and swirl, chatter and bubble. The mole was bewitched, entranced, fascinated. By the side of the river, he trotted as one trots when very small, by the side of a man who holds one spellbound by exciting stories. And when tired at last, he sat on the bank while the river still chattered on to him, a babbling procession of the best stories in the world, sent from the heart of the earth to be told at last to the insatiable sea. So for context, The Wind in the Willows basically follows the adventures of these four characters: Mole, Rat, Badger, and Mr. Toad, who's a little bit of a crackhead, to be honest. And this passage marks Mole's first encounter with a river. It's a moment of transformation. It's personified as a lively, ever-moving presence, symbolising adventure and freedom, which contrasts Mole's previous existence in a dark, static burrow, awakening him to a richer world. And this therefore reveals the symbolic role of the physical environment, how you can consciously craft it as a metaphor and a foreshadowing tool. So use your physical environment to support the atmosphere, mood, and theme of your writing. Remember the intro. We don't want wallpaper, we want a backdrop that is almost like a character, alive. Now, you might be wondering how you actually go about constructing a physical environment and building an atmosphere in your writing. Now, the answer to this question is sensory language. And this just means using your creative writing checklist. Make sure to click here, watch this video if you have not watched the creative writing checklist video already, to engage the reader's five senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. And this technique makes your descriptions immersive. While the physical environment tells the reader what's in the space, the sensory detail lets them experience it, conveying beauty, horror, darkness, peace, etc. And to show you the power of sensory language, we can have a look at one last famous example. And this comes from a novel called Perfume, The Story of a Murder. And this story follows Jean-Baptiste Grenouille. Growing up in 18th century France, he becomes obsessed with capturing and creating the perfect fragrance, which leads him to commit a series of murders and extract the scents of beautiful young women. Yes, very creepy guy. And in the opening description of Paris, we're going to get a gauge of just how powerful his sense of smell is through the sensory description. So prepare yourself. In the period of which we speak, there reigned in the cities a stench barely conceivable to us modern men and women. The streets stank of manure, the courtyards of urine, the stairwells stank of mouldering wood and rat droppings, the kitchens of spoiled cabbage and mutton fat, the unaired parlours stank of stale dust, the bedrooms of greasy sheets, damp feather beds, and the pungently sweet aroma of chamber pots. The peasant stank as did the priest, the apprentice as did his master's wife, the whole of the aristocracy stank, even the king himself stank like a rank lion, and the queen like an old goat, summer and winter. Now the novel here piles smell upon smell, sweat, rot, goat, lion, spoiled food, until you feel sick just reading it. And thus the writer sets up Grenouille's pursuit of gorgeous smells later in the novel, which he will craft himself by murdering the very few women who actually smell nice in 18th century France. Now, before I wrap up this video, here are some actionable strategies that you can implement today to take your setting descriptions to grades 7, 8, and 9. So first, as with characters, remember the rule of show don't tell. Do not blatantly state how something looks or smells or sounds. So for example, instead of saying that the air smelled like flowers, show me that it smells like flowers by describing the scent of crushed lavender clinging to the breeze, sharp and sweet as fresh cut herbs. Second, use the weather as a metaphor. So by this I mean you're using it to reflect a specific mood or atmosphere, perhaps even as a foreshadowing tool as to what might happen in your story. So if you memorize a description of a haunted forest with gnarled trees, for example, you could use it to foreshadow a terrifying main event to come later on, show intention rather than describing for its own sake. And finally, pre-learn a really advanced, refined setting description to plug into your exam. And if your memorized setting doesn't fit the exam, so the prompt or the image you're given, just use it as a flashback. So for example, if you've memorized a description about the amber sun and the crimson roses, you might feel a bit lost if you get a prompt about when you were isolated and the image is like an Arctic tundra. And to work around this, just allow your character a moment to reflect on a time when they were in the setting that you have prepared for in advance. And again, if you would like help to memorize a grade 9 setting description you can plug into your exams and how to adapt it to any question you get, then book in for a free lesson by clicking the first link in the description below. So, I hope you now understand why your settings shouldn't be like wallpaper, but instead consciously crafted from atmosphere, physical environment, and sensory details. They add colour to your story, anchor the reader, and if executed well, really impress your examiners. And if you've watched the previous 2 videos, however, there's still one thing you might be wondering: how to write an entire piece of creative writing. Well, in the next video, that's exactly what I'll show you how to do. Subscribe and turn on your notifications right now if you don't want to miss how to combine characters and settings into full narratives that examiners cannot put down using my 6-stage narrative framework. Stay strong. I'll see you in the next video.